I want to get into some news about a quarterback here in Las Vegas because that's where I reside, so I'm going to be a little bit selfish and hopefully talk a little Derek Carr with you. How about this, Michael? Derek Carr receives a nice extension Wednesday morning. It's a 3-year contract. The extension is worth $121.5 million. Carr now with the Las Vegas Raiders through the 2025 season, and he is already the longest tenured QB in the AFC, and the Las Vegas Raiders now putting an exclamation point on what's been a very eventful offseason.
You know, I think this contract is almost a symbolism of what you have to try to do when you are stuck in a spot. I think it applies to the Carolina Panthers, and we could talk about that later. Mm-hmm. But to me, when Josh McDaniels took over the job, it would be easy to say, and I think he learned from this when he took over and he had Jay Cutler, and he traded Jay Cutler, is I don't really want Carr, but you got to finish the sentence. Like, who's better than Carr? Who's going to come in and play better than Carr for me as I start this off? And knowing that I've got to I'm taking over a playoff team, that the expectations is to really continue that playoff streak. And so I got a guy that was 10-7 last year. He's 8-8 the year before. He's improved his yards per attempt tremendously. One of the criticisms that I had in his career, really before Gruden got there, was his lack of throwing the ball down the field and taking too many checkdowns. And I think ultimately he's improved under Gruden there. And so at a 30-year-old player, as much as there's some things you don't like about Carr's game, mm-hmm. you realize that you're better off sleeping with the devil you know than trading him in for somebody you don't know. And this contract and this extension, although we don't know what the deal is, Carr had $19 million, Femi, packed into his paragraph 5. That's all he was on the books for. He had no other money coming to him. So that being said, you know, they extended him out a year. It's probably based on the franchise numbers or somewhere in there, and they add more years. So now it gives the Raiders time to draft a quarterback, a future quarterback, develop a quarterback, and continue to evaluate Carr.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point that you bring up there in terms of them getting more time to possibly get a quarterback down the line, whether it be 2 or 3 years later on here. Last season, Derek Carr led the Raiders to a 10-7 season. They make the playoffs. They lose to the Cincinnati Bengals there, kind of near the goal line, that dramatic finish out there in Cincinnati. Carr throws 23 TDs, 14 interceptions, 4,800 passing yards. But I'm not the biggest Derek Carr fan, Michael, and you outlined it. Like, the checkdowns, not as aggressive as you might like for a quarterback that's supposed to elevate your franchise. I get why they did this deal, and this is kind of the going rate for quarterbacks these days. If you want to have one that's competent to good, you got to pay up the big bucks. But can you really win big with Derek Carr at your quarterback? I think that's the question that we probably know the answer to, and it's not the one that the Raiders would like.
No, I think you got to surround them with a better supporting cast. There's no denying that, and certainly the Raiders are attempting to do that with signing, you know, Devontae Adams and if they get Waller back healthy. I mean, the guy got hit way too much last year. I mean, he was sacked 40 times. I mean, 4 years ago he was sacked 51 times, and so he's been hit way too much. And I think they put too much on his plate. I think he's going to enter into a game with Josh McDaniels where they're going to take some of that off his plate. Look, he's got to get better at game management. There's no denying. You can't throw the ball on the ground on 1st and 10 at the 9. You got to run a play there. You can't throw the ball short of the goal line on 4th down. He's got to improve. I do think, and I'm not saying this because my son's there. I'm saying this because I have great respect for McDaniels as a coach, and he'll make the quarterback better. But I do think he'll improve. But I think a lot of these guys, Femi, I don't know which ones in the league, you know, on one hand count the ones that you don't have to worry about. I mean, you don't think after Mahomes, the way he played last year, you're not worried about him? I mean, it's a dirty secret. We're not allowed to talk about it. It's like, you know, somebody farted in church. I mean, you can't say he played shitty. You know, you're not allowed to say
he's an MVP. He's certified Super Bowl MVP and everything.
You got. It's like when you talk about Pro Football Focus, you have to genuflex first before you get into it. You know, you're not allowed to, because they are the experts, and so you can't say something. Oh, you know, last year I was saying Mahomes was, you know, the receivers were dropping the ball. I kept watching the tape saying, like, no, he was throwing the ball in the wrong spot. You know, what I don't think people understand is great quarterbacks. If Tom Brady is throwing the ball to you and your back is to the defense, wherever he throws the ball to, whether it's to your right shoulder or to your left shoulder, all right, that's where he wants you to turn and run. He's throwing you away from the defender. So accuracy is defined, like we've talked about many times, through the door, hitting the doorknob, or through the keyhole. And you've got to be a keyhole thrower to be an elite player. Last year, Mahomes wasn't a keyhole thrower.
Yeah, this Carr thing, I just worry about what they're able to do ultimately in terms of taking the next step here. I mean, he's been there for about 8 years now, and they've only had 2 winning seasons under Derek Carr. And I don't want to be like the wins is solely contribute to the quarterback because it's a team sport here, but you would wish that you felt a little bit better about the guy that you gave the big bucks to. I mean, I can't get out of my head there the final sequence against the Bengals when he spikes the ball, killing one down for them when they could have had 4 chances to throw the ball into the end zone. He cuts that down to 3 and then ultimately lose the game.
And that's the job of the coach. He's got to kind of do that. I mean, look, the headset was open, so blame Carr for spiking, right? But when the ball got down there, the guy on the headset, Greg Olson, should have been saying, hey, we're running a play, don't spike, because the mic was open. Now, I'm not blaming Olson for it. The quarterback should know that. I mean, there's more situational awareness that has to come through playing. And I will say this, based on the way McDaniels coaches, that's going to happen. Now, I'm with you. I said this last year. When Gruden was there, they should draft a young quarterback because unless you're willing to pay $40-45 million for Carr, if that's your appetite, you need to draft one. When they didn't do that, they basically had an appetite to pay that because what's the alternative? Okay, you're going to pick Malik Willis? You're going to pick Kenny Pickett? You're going to pick Matt Corral? I mean, where are you going with this? Like every quarterback you say is not as good as Carr. Carr was a second-round pick, Femi. Think about it. He was a second-round pick. He's better than all these guys that are talked about going in the first round. Not even close. Put his Fresno State tape on, compare it to Matt Corral, Mississippi, Malik Willis, who didn't throw a touchdown against major competition, right, and Kenny Pickett. I mean, compare the tapes. Tell me who's better.
Yeah, no, I think the thing that it bodes well for the Raiders is that it allows them to find that quarterback on their own terms is what you want to do. You don't want to have to find a quarterback when you need to find one. You want to be able to find one when the opportunity presents itself, like we saw with the Kansas City Chiefs moving up for a Patrick Mahomes in that situation. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.